Our project title is The Israel-Palestine War, Facing the Responsibilities of this Brutal Conflict.
Lately, the subject of the Israeli and Palestinian war has been a well-heard topic on the media, hasn't it?
Yes, but what really is going on, and more importantly, how did it start?
Well, the war is mainly an ongoing conflict that dates back to long ago. The two sides, the Arabs and the Jewish Israelis, are mostly fighting over the right and the responsibility over the Palestinian land, which both sides want to use the land for their own state. Both sides also consider Palestine holy land, as it is important to their religion. And now that the Israelis have their own country, which they demanded after the horrifying events of the Holocaust, the Palestinians are fighting for their own right for a state, as outlined in the 1947 partition plan.
Yes, the news outlet The Guardian states the starting point for many people is the United Nations vote in 1947 to partition land and the British mandate of Palestine into two states, one Jewish, one Arab. Around this time, there were many major skirmishes, and the Nakba also happened at this time. The website BBC states Palestinians call 1948 al-Nakba, or the catastrophe. Up to 750,000 Palestinians fled or were expelled from the land that became Israel and were never allowed back. Owing to the fact that each side wanted the Holy Land, it all exploded in 1948, igniting the first of many wars to come over the region over the land of Palestine. This first war was the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. The website Office of the Historian states, the Arab-Israeli War of 1948 broke out when 5 Arab nations invaded territory in the former Palestinian Mandate immediately following the announcement of the independence of the State of Israel on May 14, 1948. The war continued on until a formal peace agreement was signed by the last country, Syria, on July 20, 1949, although Iraq never signed one.
After the 1948 war, Israel had control over mostly everything, except for the Gaza Strip, which is under the control of Egypt and the West Bank, which Jordan controlled. But then, in 1967, yet another war broke out, the Six-Day War. The war broke out as a result of a violent border clashes between the Israelis and the Arabs. The war, like in its name, lasted for 6 days. It started on June 5th and ended on June 10th, 1967. The result was an Israeli victory, and they took control of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. After Israel took control of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, it began a brutal military occupation of the Palestinians, which caused the first intifada, or uprising, by the Palestinians in occupied territories in 1987. The first intifada came as a result of boiling tensions between the Palestinians and the Israelis. The Israelis had exploited their land and put harsh restrictions, so the Palestinians retaliated. The protests with unruly mobs and the Palestinians' casualties mounted higher. Then Israelis' casualties day by day, as the Israel authorities responded with harsh force in response to relatively peaceful protests of the Palestinian people.
In 1993, tensions eased as the Oslo Accords were signed. For many, this was a major turning point. Was it not?
Yes, it was. It was the end of the First Intifada, and in which many hoped would usher a new era of peace. But in the year 2000, a second Intifada grew out of the collapse of a peace treaty. The Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, and the chairman of the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, Yasser Arafat, were working on a peace agreement, but it broke down, and a much bloodier second Intifada began. Additionally, the news outlet Vox states that along with this, the sparks that lit this power keg was a series of Palestinian demonstrations that Israeli soldiers fired on. Palestinian militants subsequently escalated to broader violence, and the PA refused to rein them in.
And unlike the first Intifada, which in comparison was much more peaceful, Vox describes it as Palestinian tactics centered on suicide bombings, rocket attacks, and sniper fire, which Israel met with even deadlier force. When the conflict fizzled out in 2005, about 4,200 people had died, 3,200 Palestinian and 1,000 Israeli. And because of the second Intifada, Israel reoccupied some areas that the Palestinians had been given control over in past treaties.
And by this point, there had been numerous other conflicts in that Israel had over the land with its Arab neighbors.
But since the treaty in 2005, Israel has invaded Gaza on numerous occasions, and there's currently a blockade on Gaza, and there's a dire need for certain supplies, such as food and healthcare. In an interview with Paul Spiegel, a humanitarian health expert, he says the Israeli blockade of Gaza since 2007, when Hamas rose to power, combined with the intermittent conflicts that have occurred, has left the health infrastructure and services fractured, of varying quality, and with limited number of specialized health services and technology. Israel's latest invasion was a result of the October 7th attack in 2023 by Hamas in a demand for the destruction of Israel and the right to a Palestinian state.
politics.
What are the sides of this conflict?
While there's the PLO, or otherwise known as the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which is in short, as Vox explains it, a collision of Palestine nationalists, and website Palestine Remake states, the Arab League recognizes the PLO as the sole legitimate representative body of the Palestinian people. In 1974, this group was created to try to make a Palestinian state, but since the 1980s, it has been peaceful and political compared to its militia beginnings.
And then there's Hamas, the violent militia group that has been in the media a lot for its most recent conflict with Israel, and it controls the Gaza Strip. It is strongly against Israel.
There's also the Fatah Party, which controls the West Bank, was against Hamas, and is a big part of the multi-faction PLO. The U.S. supports Israel and has been a key in negotiating peace.
There is Israel, currently led by Benjamin Netanyahu and his party Likud. It was originally created to provide a home to Jewish people all around the world after the Holocaust. The website BBC describes it as, after the Nazi Holocaust, pressure grew for the international recognition of a Jewish state, and in 1948, Israel declared its independence following a UN vote to partition Palestine. And finally, there is a majority of Arab and Muslim countries, some of which have treaties and cooperate with Israel, while others do not even acknowledge Israel and don't cooperate with Israel.
In conclusion, this years-long hostilities and wars have resulted in numerous tragic deaths, injuries, families torn apart, and displacement of thousands and thousands of people. The Palestinian Arabs strongly oppose the idea of a Jewish state, and the Israelis coming more and more into their territory. Both sides, in short, are fighting for the right to have their own state. When we interviewed Professor Schatz from the California State University Fresno History Department, she gave her insight into the conflict. She stated,
the situation in Israel and Palestine is often talked about as a religious conflict, but at its heart, this is about self-determination. Zionism arose among some European Jews in the 19th century as a movement that wanted to create a Jewish nation state to which those European Jews could belong. In Palestine before 1948 and the establishment of the State of Israel, that ambition to build a Jewish state came into conflict with the Palestinian population that already lived there, who had their own political aspirations and desires for what their country would look like. And since 1948, we have seen the continuing desire of Palestinians to have self-determination and political liberation. So these are really the terms of the conflict, much more than 2 or 3 different religious groups who can't get along.
The Jews wanted a state after the Holocaust, and the Arab Palestinians wanted their own state to lay claim to. The land is holy to Muslim and Jewish religions, so that also plays a part. Some, like the guerrilla Hamas fighters, think the answer is violence. Others are hoping for a more peaceful 2-state solution as outlined in 1947.
To sum it up, they each want a state, and each side is responsible for the wars and the deaths, so each side is responsible for the installment of peace. Because in the end, we are all human, and they all deserve the right and responsibility to peace and the land.